Well, what do we have here? Another Supreme Court case, now looking at the Voting Rights Act. I think based off of this potential decision of Louisiana versus Calais, it may potentially jeopardize about 19 different Democratic fucking seats, which the Republicans will be allowed to gerrymander out of fucking existence. So this is a pretty fucking landmark case for the Voting Rights Act and voting rights, generally speaking, within the United States of America. Who's ready for more fucking tyranny of the minority fucking bullshit? So I believe that this case is based off of the fact that in Louisiana, right now, there is a law where it is expected to have at least two black districts, black majority districts within Louisiana. The recent map that was done in 2020 basically made one of those black districts disappear. There was no more second majority black district. Because again, funny thing about Louisiana, it's 33% black. Lots of black people live in fucking Louisiana. You can assume why. There's a lot of black people living in Louisiana. Should be fairly obvious. It's the slavery. But Republicans, they don't give a fuck about any of that stuff. They're racist and they hate black people, so they try to gerrymander them out of existence, basically, and pass a map with only one majority black district. Why do they do that? Well, they're racist, obviously. No shit. And as a result, they broke the fucking law, and they were sued. And it made its way to the fucking Supreme Court. We all know the current makeup of the fucking Supreme Court. Or rather, that's not accurate. It made its way up into the federal courts, and it went back down because the map was not approved by the lower courts, saying like, fix the map. You can't do this. You're not allowed. Like, it is within the state laws in order to have two majority black districts, to have some kind of representation for that. It got appealed, and now it's making its way up to the Supreme Court. So this could potentially be a huge fucking case in terms of voting rights. So the U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear a case this month that could gut what remains of the Voting Rights Act, effectively killing one of the crown jewels of the civil rights movement and the nation's most powerful statute to prevent discrimination in voting. So for the past, I believe, about 10 years, the Supreme Court has been slowly chipping away at the Voting Rights Act specifically. And obviously, this significantly accelerated simply due to the fact of the 6-3 conservative majority that exists now on the fucking Supreme Court. And obviously, with Trump being put into power, this is a perfect opportunity to basically, fuck over and completely gut the remaining of the Voting Rights Act. Basically making it such that, actual fucking representation for a bunch of the minority populations that exist within the United States of America. Nah, fuck that. It's all about fucking white. We love whiteys. Whiteys win. Let's go. The court's decision in the case Louisiana versus Calais could be one of the most consequential rulings for the Voting Rights Act since it was enacted in 1965, and is almost certainly the biggest test for the law since its decision in Shelby County v. Holder in 2013, where the justices hollowed out a provision of the law, Section 5, that required certain places to get voting changes approved by the federal government before they go into effect. Considering who's in power in the federal government right now, yeah, it's not great. Having the executive branch have to be the main fucking dudes who have to be, not the executive branch. The federal government's, it's a little more broad than the executive branch. But having the federal government have to be the main guys in order to have to approve all these fucking goddamn voting districts just makes it such that it's a way more of a bureaucratic nightmare shithole of a fucking mess. And depending on who is approved to have to take a look at those maps, you might get some potentially racist outcomes. If it's a racistly gerrymandered sort of state like Louisiana specifically, they may approve those maps and may have it such that the voting powers of black people get significantly more and more affected. Essentially sort of cementing not like a poll tax, but a similar situation as it was with during the times of segregation, where a lot of black people were just not able to have any power or any say within, well, the broader American electoral system. Supreme Court is considering the constitutionality of the most powerful remaining provision of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2. The measure outlaws election practices that are racially discriminatory and has been the tool that minority voters and voting rights advocates have frequently turned to challenge redistricting plans from congressional districts to county commissions and school boards that group voters in such a way to dilute the political influence of a minority group. Again, the thing is, with the Louisiana maps that were attempted to be passed during 2020, it makes it such that there's only one majority black district, right? Which is illegal under the Voting Rights Act, which is why the maps got sent down, it got fucking appealed, and now we're in the fucking mess that we have right now. Getting rid of Section 2 or severely limiting in the ways in which it can be applied would effectively kill the Voting Rights Act. It would take away the most powerful tool voters have to challenge racially discriminatory districts. The stakes are potentially quite large, said Sophia Lynn Lakin, the director of the Voting Rights Project of the American Civil Liberties Union. The outcome of the case will not only determine the next steps for Louisiana's congressional map, but it may also shape the future of redistricting cases worldwide. As I mentioned earlier, 19 seats are potentially at risk right now in a bunch of different conservative states. I believe in like Texas, I think even in Arkansas, and a bunch of other conservative districts. Not the districts, but in a bunch of different conservative states where a bunch of Democratic, basically blue dot holdouts may potentially be completely destroyed simply due to the fact of the Voting Rights Act being affected in the way that it is, with Section 2 essentially being completely and utterly fucking gutted. So this is essentially the maps that I've been mentioning earlier. So this is the map that they tried to pass, obviously, trying to divide up black people as much as possible. And this is the map that was forced to have to be done with 2 majority black districts. The reason why there has to be at least 2 majority black districts within Louisiana is because under the Voting Rights Act, I believe Louisiana is 6 districts in total. Given the fact that, like I said before, about a third of black people, not a third of black people, but about a third of Louisiana's population are black, it stands to reason that about a third of these districts have to have majority black districts, right? That's sort of a fair amount of representation that exists within the state. However, since Republicans are racist, they are willing to draw maps that are going to completely dilute and destroy that. Because in reality, for them, it's all about maintenance of hierarchy control and basically putting a bunch of minority populations under their fucking jackboot. That's the entirety of the point. The point is the fucking racism with these people. The dispute at the court is focused on a challenge by white voters into a majority black district in Louisiana that stretches from Shreveport to Baton Rouge. The justices already heard oral argumentation in the case in March that focused on whether Louisiana Republicans had overrelied on race when they redrew the district in response to a Section 2 lawsuit by black voters. In an unusual move, the court did not reach a decision at the end of the court's term this summer and instead set the case for re-argument this fall. Basically to give an excuse for more than likely the white voters and the conservatives in this particular instance to basically come up with some dumbass fucking argument to justify the passing of the map. The justices announced in August they want the parties to submit briefing on whether Louisiana's intentional creation of a second majority-minority congressional district violates the 14th or 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection of the law for all U.S. citizens, and the 15th Amendment prohibits the government from denying someone the right to vote based on their race. Seems like a potentially very interesting case to have to take a look into. Because again, as has been said before, and I guess like the argument of the conservatives is like, well, based off of these districts, the black people are not being denied their right to vote But the problem is that since a third of Louisiana is black, about a third of the state's population, that is, it stands to reason that about a third of those districts should have a representation for that third of the population, right? Stands to reason within the Voting Rights Act, within Section 2. But Republicans don't want that, obviously. They want to basically take away as many seats as possible from the Democrats because for them, it's all about, well, power games for them specifically. And, if they can be racist at the same time as well, fuck it. That's fine by them as well. The question raised the stakes of the case at the court, giving opponents of the law a chance to argue the landmark civil rights statute should either be significantly narrowed or struck down entirely. This is why the battle of fucking voting rights is a never-ending one, and civil rights in general. Because basically, if you just allow these complete, utter charlatans and freaks any room to be able to just keep arguing and arguing, because if they want to basically take away all rights, if a conservative could do that, they would. They wouldn't give a shit. They gladly would take away all of your rights if they ever got the opportunity to do as such. Because again, the point for these people is about maintenance of hierarchy and control. Racialized hierarchy, even fucking gendered hierarchy, sexualized hierarchy. It is all about that maintenance of control for these people, which is why you can never, ever, ever give them an inch. Otherwise, they'll take a mile. The challengers in the state do not limit themselves to whether conditions in Louisiana continue to justify application of the Voting Rights Act there, said Stuart Naif, a lawyer with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, which is representing voters defending the existing map, that being this map, the 2024 map. They have attempted to expand the question beyond what the court has asked, and they argue that Section 2 is not constitutional at all anywhere. Yet, unfortunately, the 15th Amendment would like to disagree with that. The government from denying someone from the right to vote based on their race. Now, you can make the technical argument that it's not denying them that right. However, if you can effectively sort of just dilute the pool of voters and just not give them the ability to have representation by proxy, again, conservatives will never have any problems with that. And it's obvious that the 2022 map is racially fucking motivated from Republicans. It's very obvious that's the case. There are many possibilities for how the court could rule. The justices could beat back those arguments and affirm the constitutionality of Section 2. Questionable at best if they'll actually do that. The court could also say once and for all that the provisions is unconstitutional, dealing a fatal blow to the Voting Rights Act, essentially making it completely fucking useless, saying that Section 2, if they say Section 2 is unconstitutional, then bye-bye Voting Rights Act, one of the key landmark pieces of legislation for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I believe it is. I don't remember exactly when it was put into place by Lyndon B. Johnson. It could also rule somewhere in between, leaving Section 2 intact, but make the test to deploy it much harder, in effect neutering it. That's what I think they're more than likely going to do, because if they actually do outright try to gut it, I mean, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas are going to try to basically gut it and get rid of it if they can, because again, those two people are far-right pieces of shit, and, if it means taking rights away from minorities, they gladly will. They have no problem with that. The two key pillars, at least since 1982, were Section 2 and Section 5, said Richard Hassan, an election law scholar at the University of California in Los Angeles. Shelby County already knocked down one of those pillars, and this could potentially either knock it down or render it so weak that you might as well say it's been knocked down. He added that weakening but not killing Section 2 might potentially avoid some of the political costs. That's what I think is also going to happen, because if they outright just kill it, there's going to be riots out in the fucking streets. 1,000%. Because that's going to be such a huge news item that the media can't ignore. Because again, the media is not already going to talk much about this because it's all procedural, electoral, court nonsense that's very boring, not going to get the ratings. Because again, Thank you, commodified media, making it such that this is a case in the news that nobody really gives much of a fuck about. But, we love fucking dumbass commodified media that's never going to talk about real fucking important stuff, because it's all about making all that money in order from advertisers and shit. So they're not going to talk about civil rights that are being taken away from people. So that's cool. Great, fantastic. The case arrives at the court after many of the court's conservative justices have openly expressed skepticism about the continued need for Section 2. The authority to conduct race-based districting cannot extend indefinitely into the future, Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote in a 2023 concurring opinion. Of course, the racists don't like this. Who would have thought? A remark that was widely seen as an ominous sign for Section 2. Justice Clarence Thomas has long publicly said he thinks the statute is unconstitutional when it comes to redistricting. Why am I not surprised? Congress amended Section 2 in 1982 to clarify that it outlawed practices that resulted in discrimination. One did not need to prove intent. Working as an attorney in the Justice Department, John Roberts advocated strongly against those amendments. Yep, he is the current Chief Justice, by the way. The one who basically brings a lot of these cases to the court. The fact that he's saying that this is, he is also against a lot of these amendments is a very, very spooky sign, for sure, obviously. Could basically make it such that the conservatives may have a sort of permission structure to effectively gut the fucking Voting Rights Act. So that's great. The consequences of just gutting Section 2 would be drastic. Lakin and other attorneys representing black voters defending Louisiana's current map wrote in the brief to the justices. Without Section 2, jurisdictions could simply eliminate minority opportunity districts, even where they remain necessary for voters of color to have any opportunity to elect candidates of choice, wiping out minority representation and resegregating legislators. Again, effectively, because only white people are going to be the ones that are able to vote within those particular districts, because a lot of those minorities are just going to be like, well, there's not much of a point of me being able to be able to vote, because all of the districts are written in a particular way such that I have no voting power effectively. So what is the point of trying to run for representation? Like, should be fairly fucking obvious. Resegregating legislators, city councils, and school boards, as some have recently attempted to do, they wrote. Districts based in obvious majority-minority communities like Harlem or Tuskegee could be divided along obvious racial lines without consequence. Louisiana legislators reportedly have already been asked to hold dates for a possible special session on redistricting after the oral argument this fall. You shouldn't be surprised about that at all. They are wholeheartedly ready to fucking pounce on this and basically fuck over all black voters. They have no problem with this. The case before the court on the 15th of October, that's relatively soon, involves a long and twisted saga over Louisiana's congressional map, which Linda Greenhouse, who covered the Supreme Court for decades for the New York Times, called, without doubt, the most complicated voting rights case I have ever encountered. After the 2020 census, the state drew a congressional map that had only one majority black district out of 6, even though black voters make up about a third of the eligible voters in the state. Well, it's the same stuff I've been saying. Black voters sued under the state under the Voting Rights Act. 2 courts agreed with their claims, and the state eventually drew up a new map that created a second majority-minority district, wanting to protect powerful incumbents in the state, including the House Speaker Mike Johnson and Representative Julia Letlow. While also being majority black, the new district has an extremely odd shape. Who would have thought? Whoa, you're telling me that the fucking Republicans who are drawing these congressional maps are going to draw them in an incredibly fucking dishonest way in order to be able to protect some of their more necessary members for their fucking party? Who would have thought? But after the new maps went into effect, a group of white voters sued in a different court, arguing the new district improperly sorted voters based on their race. A court agreed to that with that argument in 2024, but the U.S. Supreme Court allowed the redrawn map to go into effect for last fall's election. Because it was basically a little sort of too soon to probably rule on stuff like that, but now is like about as good of a time as any, just before because more than likely, if something were to change, the effects would probably take into effect, if I were to take a guess, after the midterms, where a bunch of other states are probably going to sue, blah, 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 blah. Because again, like, if this does go through, potentially up to 19 Democratic seats within a bunch of Republican states are going to be gone just like that. Texas, there's definitely going to be a bunch of seats that are at risk. Probably like Ohio, there's probably going to be seats at risk, if I were to take a guess. The Carolinas as well. A bunch of different fucking states, right? Cleo Fields, a black Democrat, won the district by more than 13 points. His win was a big deal for the people like Martha Davis, who worked as both a teacher and administrator for 40 years. She still remembers waiting in segregated waiting rooms as a young girl and going to a segregated Catholic school, where she now got used books from the white Catholic school. Now she lives in North Baton Rouge. It's like the wrong side of the track. It's like the forgotten area, said Davis, who was one of the black voters who sued Louisiana over its original map. There are no hospitals nearby, no grocery stores nearby. The streets are deplorable. Nobody could care less about what happened in that part of town. Unfortunately, it's because there's a bunch of black people living there, and you're run by a bunch of dumbass fucking Republicans who are incredibly fucking racist. And if they could bring back slavery, they could. They would, 1,000%. Like, just get rid of all those people. And fuck it, white ethno state for these people, which is exactly what they want. And representation for those people in those districts that are part of the more majority black areas is going to be able to get the funding that they need within those like cities, towns, suburbs, whatever, in order to be able to repair infrastructure, in order to be able to repair the roads, to be able to get more supplies for their schools and stuff like that. But Republicans don't want any of that stuff. They just want these people to suffer. The fact that we were able to choose somebody that looks like me, somebody who knows what our needs are and fight for us, that made me overjoyed, she said. Fields' win also made a difference to Devontae Lewis, a member of the Louisiana Public Service Commission who represents the Baton Rouge area. He said that Fields' election last year, it had been easier to get help on federal issues like disaster relief. That's a great point. Lot of hurricanes that tend to go through Louisiana, right? Federal relief with someone especially who's going to actually fight for the people in that fucking district significantly fucking matters. Let's be honest here. When we need help for certain areas, you want your member of Congress to know it, said Lewis, who was also one of the plaintiffs in the original suit challenging Louisiana's map. You don't want them to be 170 miles away who have no connection to where you are. So what? This is the previous boundaries weakened black voters' influence in Baton Rouge, splitting them up against multiple districts. Yeah, look at that. Look at this shit. Concentrations of all these like black people in different places, because it's meant to dilute the power of the Democrats, right? District 6 and the tomfoolery that is District 2 specifically, with this like really thin lines over here. This is very, very obviously meant to do one thing, and that's fucking gerrymander, right? Because it's meant to split up the fucking black vote effectively in half to dilute the power of these particular majority fucking districts. Yeah, the Democrats make everything so political. That's so true, Boy Meets Minnie. When the case was before the Supreme Court in March, Louisiana defended its redrawn map, of course, saying it had made a good faith effort to comply with the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act after judges had blocked their original plan. Really, if that were the case, then you would have had a second majority-minority fucking district based off of your census and the amount of black people that are living within there. So don't fucking like blatantly lie to me and say like, oh yeah, this was a good faith attempt. No, it fucking wasn't. Full of shit. But then again, just blatantly lying, that's totally okay for Republicans. It's the permission structure is there thanks to Donald Trump. Yeah, good faith, by the way. Yeah, totally. But after the justices invited further briefing, the state switched its position and now says that the map is unconstitutional. The 2024 map, of course. There isn't the kind of ongoing discrimination that would justify bringing racial considerations into redistricting, the state's lawyers said. They argued that the Supreme Court has only recognized two contexts in which it is acceptable for the government to take race-based action. Remedying specific past instances of discrimination and avoiding imminent safety risks in prisons, like preventing a race riot. These two interests share a critical feature that Section 2 lacks. They turn on a specific harm and permit only a correspondingly narrow temporary remedy, they wrote in their own brief to the court. Race-based redistricting pursuant to Section 2, by contrast, is nothing of the sort. It presents no imminent danger to human safety. And that's what I figured their argument is going to be. They're going to be like, well, what do you mean? The black people can still vote. This is in line with the Voting Rights Act. Yeah, but quite literally, in the Voting Rights Act, it also specifies that based off of census data within the Voting Rights Act, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, any of the Americans in chat, that depending on the amount of the percentage of minority populations that exist, you cannot draw districts, and you must have an appropriate amount of districts to have those people be able to be represented within that fucking state. Like has been said before, about a third of Louisiana's population is black. There's only 6 districts within Louisiana. Simple math would dictate that there has to be at least 2 majority black districts within Louisiana, such that those people have fair representation within Congress. Because if not, you can essentially draw the districts in such a way that they don't have any of that representation, and they are effectively segregated and have no voice. Because do you think the Republicans are going to be the main people who are going to represent the voices of those black people? Fuck no, absolutely not. Why would they ever do that, right? So this would effectively, of course, if they go after Section 2 in this way, would gut the Voting Rights Act and essentially just make it completely fucking moot. Which is fine for the conservatives, because in reality, oh, well, these motherfuckers are fucking racist. Oh, who would have thought? It's crazy, I know. It presents no imminent danger to human safety. In its heartland of application today, it also has nothing to do with remediating past intentional discrimination, let alone specific identified instances of intentional discrimination. Oh yeah, dude, totally, because Louisiana totally would never do any intentional discrimination against the minority populations that vote within their fucking state. No, no, no. There would never be any instances of that whatsoever, of course. The U.S. Supreme Court has allowed map makers to use race in drawing districts if it is in service of a compelling interest and its use is narrowly tailored to that interest. Writing in for the court in a 2017 case, Justice Elena Kagan noted the justices had long assumed that complying with the Voting Rights Act was a compelling interest. Those defending the maps argued that the Supreme Court precedent already requires them to clear a series of higher hurdles to show that race-conscious redistricting is needed in a Section 2 case. It is difficult to win a Section 2 case. From 2012 to 2021, there were 48 Section 2 cases dealing with vote dilution filed, and just 21 of them were successful. According to data collected by the Voting Rights Institute at the University of Michigan, clearing those hurdles, those defending Louisiana's map say, requires them to show there is ongoing discrimination. Well, the point of the fucking maps that they decided to put into power in 2022 obviously is meant to dilute the voting power of black people such that they can never have any opportunity to have representation within their state. That's the point, right? Because they want all those well, in reality, if they could have all 6 of those districts in power for the Republicans, they could, if they could draw a map like that. I don't think that's really possible without having to add more districts to split up the black vote in some particular effective way. Like, given the amount of black people that live in Louisiana, there is no way that's ever going to fucking happen. So, as is stipulated within the fucking Voting Rights Act, you can't just fucking discriminate them simply due to the fact that there is a large concentration of fucking black people, which is effectively what the Republicans are trying to do, obviously. It is all fucking racially charged with these motherfuckers. They love doing racially charged bullshit. They love doing that. It's like one of their favorite things to do. And so it dictates and makes it such that, well, you have to be able to make appropriate maps for these people to have fucking representation in them. Because if you don't, they're not going to have any of the representation that they ever want. And the fact that these hurdles are basically put into place for these Section 2 cases makes it such that, that these dumbasses who keep doing all the gerrymandering that they do, well, obviously in the pertinence of being able to dilute the minority votes within their fucking states, it makes it such that they actually have to draw fair maps so those people actually have fair representation. Because again, like I said before, the point of all of this is that they just, if conservatives could have segregation put back into place, they would obviously do it. Without a fucking question, they would have segregation be put back into place. Because these people are fucking racist, fundamentally speaking. So, yeah, if they can just draw the maps in a particular way such that it can be no black representation in any of these, like, Republican districts, or minority representation in any of these fucking Republican states, they would definitely do it. Like I said before, 19 Democrat seats are potentially at risk depending on what ruling is done in terms of Section 2, which is great for me, folks. I'm gonna have a great time during the next elections where I run for a third. I mean, what? No, I would never run for a third term. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But that's pretty fucking great, cool, fantastic. Section 2's permanent nature does not mean that its application is without limitation. Congress ensured that Section 2's results test is appropriately constrained and requires a remedy only where race is definitely shaping political decision making. Well, unfortunately, it's like literally every decision that Republicans fucking make. They love making everything about race, these motherfuckers. So, yeah, I think that's something that's going to generally fucking happen. Yeah, I'll be quite honest here. Leading to a pattern of persistent and ongoing electoral losses for candidates preferred by a cohesive minority voting bloc. As is true in Louisiana, those current conditions may give rise to the need for a race-conscious remedy for unlawful racial dilution. The Trump administration has filed a brief in the case, siding with the white voters, of course, challenging the map and urging the Supreme Court to make it harder to win a Section 2 case. I mean, it should be fairly fucking obvious, right? Because, again, for Trump, not only is he fucking racist, but also it's all about basically doing everything possible to make sure that the Republicans are able to stay in the power. Again, if a minority of the voters, which Republicans are, can do their own tyranny on the fucking majority, they gladly would every single time. Tyranny of the minority, as always. Since Trump's inauguration, the Justice Department has withdrawn from all of its pending Section 2 cases and has not filed any new ones. Too often, Section 2 is deployed as a form of electoral race-based affirmative action to undo a state's constitutional pursuit of political ends. Yeah, but the thing is maybe if you guys were not drawing so many fucking racist maps in order to basically effectively not have any representation for those minority voters, then maybe that wouldn't be an issue. But unfortunately, you guys are a bunch of dumbass racists who want those people to not have any representation within Congress because you just want to be kings who rule from on high. That's what it is with these people. Or either kill or get rid of all of them. And so this wouldn't have to be a problem whatsoever. Because, again, the point of all of this is so they can have segregationist policies put back into place, right? And gutting and getting rid of the Voting Rights Act is a step to that new, like, neo-fucking segregation. Like, let's be honest here. Davis, the former teacher who recalled growing up during segregation, expressed disbelief at the argument that the Voting Rights Act was no longer needed. The fact that they want to take that away, it's like we just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. When does it end? When there are no more conservatives. Unironically, you want to not have the fight for civil rights ever basically stop, I guess, for lack of a better term, or not sort of, depreciate and get worse, then you have to get rid of the conservatives. Unironically, vote them out. Well, that's one way of doing it. Or changing the electoral system within the United States such that this is no longer an issue. One of the two, right? You have to make it such that the conservatives are not able to gain power in either the House or the fucking Senate or the fucking presidency in some way. That's by getting rid of the fucking Electoral College. The DEI for fucking conservatives. For all the complaining that conservatives do about fucking affirmative action, they love affirmative action when it comes to doing everything possible in order to maintain power under themselves, so they can do their fucking decrees from on high in order to make people suffer all of their sort of racist, segregationist sort of policies and ideas. Because in reality, what these people want is for people to suffer for the fact that they have a different color of skin. But yeah, I don't think there's really much else to say besides shouldn't be really surprised by the fact that conservatives are trying to do everything possible to have segregation effectively return within the United States of America. This is my shocked Pikachu face because, oh boy, I sure am shocked about the fact that conservatives are basically trying to do everything possible to make black people suffer within the United States of America. Who would have thought?